All right, we're going to go ahead and talk about the next step. So where the last video left off is I went ahead and I shaded with a pencil all of the lines that bled through the paper in Sharpie. And these were all my important lines. Then I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to position it at the bottom of the paper. Now, most of you are going to have an artwork that looks like this, which is a vertical or a portrait view. But if yours is landscape or back and forth, it's still a portrait of this koala, but it's just landscape view. Either way is fine with me, but you want to position it at the bottom of whichever way you're orienting it. Then what you're going to do is you can use tape to lightly tape this down, but I will say if you're using paper or sometimes even if you're using a canvas board, it could rip the paper, which isn't a huge deal, but if you're painting and it rips your main paper that you're painting on, that is a little bit more of a big deal. So you're going to take your pencil and wherever you drew Sharpie, you're going to draw and press down. Not so hard that you break the lead, but you want to press down pretty dark because what you're doing is you are pressing that graphite or lead, as a lot of people call it, into the paper below. And what that is going to do is it's going to give you an outline of your animal. Now, again, if you're at home and you don't have a printer, you are simply going to draw out your animal on your computer paper to the best of your ability. Again, it's an outline. Do your best. So I'm going to go through, pretend I had it all outlined. All right. So this is what it looks like so far. Some of the lines don't always transfer perfectly, and you can go ahead and draw those in. Sometimes whenever you do, like, let's say an eyes or a nose and it doesn't look right, you can erase it and redraw it so that it looks correct. So on the back, I have what my finished one is. Now, once you get the image transferred like this, you need to make some adjustments. So if you notice, I have this space at the bottom of the paper or at the bottom of the canvas, and that's because there is a space at the bottom of the printout. So what I can do is simply do my best to draw my project to the end of the page so that it looks as correct as possible. Okay. Same thing goes for the top. If you have something that extends upward, so this is sort of like a branch, I'm going to need to extend that all the way up to the top of the paper as best as I can so it looks correct. Now, there may be other things, happening here that I can add to the background, but for now, I'm just going to leave it like this. All right, the next step of the project is to add those organic shapes inside of your animal. So remember, organic shapes are those shapes that Sherry Shipley did. Let me see if I can go ahead and pull up my example for you. The organic shapes do not have hard edges. So when I drew mine, it's loading, it's taking a while. I did a lot of shapes that were almost like curlicues or spirals. Keep in mind when you do that, you have to make them so that you can paint them in. So you can't just do a swirl. It has to be a type of swirl that it can be painted in. So I'm always trying to tell people to be cautious, but notice there are no hard edges. Everything is sort of this organic or rounded shape. So I'm going to go through on mine and I'm going to try to figure out maybe the direction of the fur a little bit. So this fur kind of grows outward. So maybe I'll make some of my shapes. I always like to start with these curlicues. I'm sorry. I just love them. And maybe I'll make it go outward. Now, you can see that I have this shape now that I can paint in. What you want to do with your other shapes is you want to make sure that it always defines an area that can be painted. So if you have a lot of shapes, I'm going to do a curlicue over here. It's going to look like a ram. If you have a lot of shapes, let's say let's say I do a shape off the side here, that's fine. But then I have all this area in the inside that needs to be separated. So I could go ahead, I could do another shape, and then I could just paint that in if I wanted to. There may be some areas that you want to keep a little bit more separated. Like let's say maybe I want the face not to be quite as busy. So maybe the shapes that I do on the face, they are bigger. Or I could even do the face the same shape. It looks like he's wearing a mask. All right. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the fur. This one is like darker on the outside, and the koala has like a, let's say, a white belly. So I can go through again, make my shapes as organic as possible. And it really, the style really depends on what kind of animal it is. The koala really doesn't give me too much to work with, to be honest with you, because its fur is like just very short little hairs. So I'm kind of making this up as I go along. But notice I'm making things that can be painted in. So I would go through and I would add those shapes until I was finished. Not every part has to have shapes. I would, let's say, if I'm going to leave the belly blank, I'm going to probably make sure that I do the bark of the tree. It almost looks like it's melting here. Might do something like that. All right, then in the background needs to be very simple, okay? So I could literally do just color, like a flat color in the background. I could make it a little more interactive. Like for whatever reason, I thought of, well, what if I made like some sort of jungle leaf falling down on the koala, and I made a couple more. It made the background a little bit more interactive. So you can do something like that, but you want to make the background very, very basic. Okay. After this point, you'd be ready to start the painting.